MOR You Know, a brand new virtual series by Abermor. For those of you who don't know, Abermor is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization whose goal is to create job opportunities for people with all types of disabilities. The first step in creating jobs is breaking down the myths about hiring people with disabilities in the community. And that's why we're here. Today, we're here with Erika. Hi, Erika. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work experiences?
Yeah, so I'm Erika Heffernan. I currently live in Key West and I work for a local arts collective not-for-profit called the Studios of Key West as their box office manager. So I'm in charge of the guest experience, ticket sales, art sales. And so it's a great organization to work for as an artist, and I'm very happy to be here. I also have spent the last 7 years before this working in student affairs and higher education, working with students to help build communities that are inclusive, as well as training and development.
That is great. And I know you are an artist. Could you tell us more about your art and photography?
Yeah, so I'm an artist and I have an invisible disability. And so originally when I started making artwork, I was sort of sharing a little insight into how I see the world. But I wasn't really openly talking about my disability. I wasn't diagnosed until I was a junior in high school. So for me, it was not something that I had a lot of pride in. It was more something that I hid and got around as opposed to really acknowledging it. And then when I went to get my master's, I really started to delve into why I was feeling that way about it and started making work about my disability more directly. So the piece that has gotten the most buzz and has been shown internationally is called Learning How to Build. And so I had 28 people from ages 6 to 79 build with children's building blocks to computerized audio instructions. So the computer voice would tell you, put the red block here, put the blue block here, assuming that because I have a learning disability that I would mess up on camera and that the other people on screen would build it perfectly. And what I learned throughout the project was that everyone built the building completely differently from those same instructions. So it really taught me that we should be celebrating the ways that we all comprehend instead of there being always a right and wrong answer, and that there's many ways to come to the same conclusion, and how important it is to be really thorough in your communication and your training in order for everyone to be able to get on the same page. And when I am teaching in a classroom of 28, I try to teach in a variety of ways so that all learners can get to the point that we want them to be successful.
I think that's so great about your art. It's so much about inclusion. And I feel like inclusion is so important, not only in the growth of individuals, but in the growth of businesses too. So can you help us understand how companies can be more inclusive?
Absolutely. And so I started working at Disney when I was 19. And of course, they're world renowned for their guest service and experiences. And it was really sort of my first professional job. And they have people hired from all over the world, a very diverse cast, as well as a whole department dedicated to disabilities. So, seeing sign language interpreters at different shows was very natural and sort of became what I expected every organization to be. And then when I went to get my master's and started in higher education, I realized that that was not quite the case in every business. And it was kind of shocking to me because I had, spent so many years at Disney. I just didn't really understand that a lot of other places just didn't know what to do. Even though there's the ADA and it's law, you don't know what you don't know. And so it was such a different experience. And so when I was in higher education, working with professors to work on their syllabus and how to be inclusive with students, what I often got was, accommodations are so difficult and they're such a chore. And, does this student really need extra time, or does this student really need this? Like, it's really going to be bothersome for me as a professor if I have to stop everything I'm doing and record this portion of the lecture. And so I heard all of the barriers from faculty as to why it was so difficult for them personally when I was a student, as well as when I was on the administrative side. And so I really worked with them to come up with simple tools that would help them to better understand that accommodations don't have to be difficult. They don't have to always be expensive. And if you approach it from a place of inclusion, where you are putting on your syllabus on day one, instead of the standard sentence that's like legal jargon that like, if you need accommodations, please go to this department. But being more inclusive of not just disabilities, but anything that someone might need, by saying, I'm a professor that cares about you and I want you to be successful in this class. So if there is anything that I can do to help make your life more successful in this class, please come and speak to me after. It's a very different statement from law versus I really care about you as a human and I want you to do great in my class. So how can we approach this? And when I started having those conversations with professors, they were like, oh, and I was like, yeah, it's not just about the person with a learning disability. It's the single mom that has to arrange daycare, and it's a snowstorm and she can't get the kid to daycare, so she needs to bring it to class. And, it's all of those parts of inclusion that makes somebody feel valued and appreciated. And anytime you feel valued and appreciated, whether it's as a student or as a worker in a business, you're more apt to give 100%, to feel confident in yourself that, yeah, I can do this. I can absolutely be successful in this. But at the same time, knowing that if you do have an issue or have a slip up or something that you're not quite sure about, that your boss or your professor is willing to have that conversation with you to make sure you have the tools to be successful.
That's great. And you mentioned in your answer that sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? And we are a brand new organization and we are learning along the way, but there's lots of things we don't know. Has there been any missteps that you've had along the way when it comes to inclusion?
Yeah. So, like I said, I didn't really have accommodations in high school because I wasn't diagnosed until I was a junior. And when I was diagnosed for undergrad, I was an athlete and just kind of said, awesome, I get extra time on my test. I'm just going to coast on through, and never really learned much about my disability and sort of how my brain functioned. And then when I got into grad school, I got more detailed into that. But so I'd spent, 2 years of grad school really advocating and pushing for disability awareness. And when I started my first professional role at higher education, being an artist, I would do a newsletter that would tell all the students about all the activities and exciting things that were happening. And of course, I used Photoshop and made it super fancy and looked really great. And I was so proud of my newsletter because it was like way better than everybody else's. And I was so proud of myself. And everybody would comment on how great it was. And then I had a student who came into my office and she said, I have a visual disability and I can't read your newsletter because it's not accessible for my screen reader. And for me, it just absolutely knocked the wind out of my sails. And I was mortified. I was embarrassed. Like, here I am, an advocate for disability. And I had never used a screen reader. I didn't know how a screen reader worked. So it being in a non-accessible PDF format, she had no idea what time my events were, what days my events were, what was happening. And so I completely am so thankful that she had the courage to come into my office and say that, because a lot of people with disabilities face that kind of issue and discrimination so often that they get tired of having to educate everybody. So I was so thankful that she was willing to come in and share that with me. And then it was my job as the person who's running those events to make sure I educated myself, and that I went in and learned how a screen reader worked and learned how to make sure that my newsletters and emails and everything were accessible so that everybody can enjoy in that community building.
That's such an inspiring story, because truly no one is perfect, but it's so important to learn and to want to learn and to want to make things better. I want to know why you think job opportunities are still lacking for people with disabilities, even though there is a want to learn.
So I think it depends on quite a few reasons, actually, as to why there is still this lag in employment or in sharing our stories about disability. 1 in 5 Americans has a disability. So that's a huge number of people. And for the most part, we don't know. And disability also is an area that you can flow in and out of as identity, as a part of your life. Your race is who you are your whole life, whereas disability, if you break your arm, you could be with a disability for a short amount of time, or if, you have dementia, then you're going to descend into disability for a longer period of time. And so all of that is really an experience that until it affects you or your family member, you typically don't think about all the privilege that comes with able-bodiedness. And so in the K through 12 system, we've done a great job of setting up students of this next generation to have accommodations, and their parents usually advocate for them on how to get through this process and to be successful in school. And then when they graduate and they're sent out into the business world, it's kind of like, good luck. And so there's not that support system there that really helps somebody learn how to be their own advocate and how to express what they need from an employer. And also, when do you disclose that? If you disclose it during the hiring process, will you be discriminated against because that employer has never worked with someone with a disability and they have 10 applicants in front of them that are all equally qualified, and they're just like, oh, that seems like problematic. I don't want to really, we'll just skip that person and move on. But if you don't share it in the hiring process and then you get into the position and you ask for accommodations and they're not open or receptive to that, then that's also a struggle to go through. So there's the Job Accommodations Network, or JAN network, that I didn't discover until almost 15 years into my professional career, when I was struggling with a supervisor and somebody showed it to me. And it breaks down every disability possible and the accommodations that you could ask for that would be of assistance to you. So that was a huge game changer for me, because I just had a supervisor who just kept saying over and over again, you don't talk strange. Like you don't have a problem expressing yourself. Like, why are you struggling with these emails or with writing? And I was like, well, my disability is in comprehension and in reading and writing, and I have a 3rd grade reading level. And he was like, no, absolutely not. Like, you have your master's. Like, that's ridiculous. And so I knew that I wasn't going to get very far in requesting accommodations without some backup. So I brought, the JAN materials with me. But it definitely can, bang your head against a wall when you are so frustrated and trying to find that right employment. And so for me, I think that was kind of the turning point when I was working on my thesis, and I went to disability specialist to get retested on my learning disability, because I assumed it had been 10 years since I had taken the last test. I'm getting my master's. I'm going to do better. Like, of course, like I've grown so much. I've worked a lot of different places. Like, I'm definitely going to score better this time around. And when I got those scores back and they were the same, it just was so frustrating and so upsetting. And I was sitting with the specialist, and part of that process was to go through the emotions of that, to make artwork about it. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, how can I still score so badly on this section? And she's like, because that's your disability. Like, it's not gonna improve. Like, that is like who you are. And you found workarounds, you found tools to help you, you found allies in your work, department that help you with the things that you struggle with. But like, this part of it is not going to, get better. And at first I was really devastated by that and was like, wow, that's like really big news. And I don't know how to process it. And then I started thinking about it and was like, yeah, so I struggle in this area, but my strengths are in memory, and my strengths are in, visual, abilities. So I should work in areas that are my strengths, and the other stuff I can get help with, I can get accommodations for. And was so empowering for me at that point, to really not concentrate on those things that, I struggle with, and really focus on those strengths. So in going back to that supervisor, it sort of helped me to reframe how I approach the situation, in terms of like, I can do this, this, and this for you, and it will help our department and help our team. But like, some of these things I am going to need some assistance with. And so it helped to reframe the conversation a little bit, and help them to better understand a little bit of what I was going through. But there is always going to be, until more people are educated, frustration when it comes to accommodation and employers and getting hired as a person with a disability, and how you can approach that conversation. So hopefully, with the consulting that I do and my artwork, and with, experiences like this in your company, we're going to move that bar forward and help people to get hired, because once again, if you hire somebody with a disability, they're already a person who can overcome struggle. They're already a person who's very determined to even have walked into your office or come to an interview. And if you can meet those accommodations, whatever those are, they're going to stay loyal to your company, because anybody that feels valued and appreciated and you're willing to support them, they're going to give you 100% every time.
I think that's just so important. It's so, so important for people to hear. And I love your perspective on focusing on your abilities and kind of reframing your thought process, because that is what everyone should do, right? Everyone should focus on the abilities that you do have and what you bring to the table. And we're just so excited that there's going to be people out there that maybe didn't have the chance to show it before. And hopefully Abermor can help with that, along with a lot of other businesses in the community.
Yeah, I think we're living in completely interesting days right now in 2020 and the time of COVID-19. It's been really interesting. I've had a few colleagues in the past that struggled with anxiety and depression that had requested to come to meetings via Zoom from their apartments because they were struggling to get into the meeting on time, and they felt like they'd be more successful if they could meet over the phone. And they were denied those accommodations, just saying that, oh, no, you have to be in person. It's not something we can do. Oh, we don't know how to do video conferencing. It's just not possible. And with, the magic of COVID-19, unfortunately, Zoom has become something that everybody's using. Our Google Hangouts and Google Meets and all of this technology has really allowed folks that have disabilities to be included in those conversations and to be in those meetings, maybe at a higher level than they had been able to be in the past. Because once again, if you're comfortable, if you're getting your needs met, you're going to be able to participate more fully as yourself in that interaction. So I think that it's really opened an exciting door that it's going to be hard for employers to close once there's a vaccine and we all go back to the office. And hopefully in this time, maybe some of those businesses have been able to hire work from home professionals that they didn't even know had a disability because of through the hiring process and interviewing over the phone or interviewing through Zoom, that it's increased some of that workforce. And hopefully we won't take any steps backward, and we'll continue to explore different options for people to be able to earn a living and earn an income and be a part of that conversation, in a different way. And once again, when you have a department that's diverse and inclusive with a lot of different people, it definitely helps your business to be more inclusive of your guest or your client, which then is going to bring more to the table for you as well.
So thank you so much for being here today, Erika. We really, really appreciate it. And we're so excited to continue this speaker series. So not only can we learn more, but hopefully the community can learn more with us. If you're interested in learning more about Abermor or have more questions for Erika, please check out www.abermor.com and keep checking out our Facebook page for more videos. We hope you've enjoyed The More You Know. Thanks again, Erika. See you soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.